Hello everyone and welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis by LawSikho. Let's see what articles we will be discussing today. Basically today there are a number of articles that are not only very important but are also very interesting as they are dealing with very vibrant issues that are happening around us. The first article is from The Hindu, which is titled as Troubled Waters, which basically talks about the water dispute which is going on between Greece and Turkey regarding the Mediterranean Sea. Now, what are the causes of that, the consequences of that, we'll be discussing in detail. Secondly, aiming to decolonize through colonial logic. Now, as we know that very recently, the Ministry of Home Affairs has set up an ad hoc committee for the purpose of overhauling or reviewing the criminal law system in India. So, many drawbacks that are attached to this committee, though we have also discussed it before, but now here it has given a very lucid and clear discussion about it, and that is why we'll be taking it up today. And thirdly, rethinking the city. As we know that the impact of this huge pandemic of COVID-19 has hit harder on our cities, because definitely the cities had a greater strain on themselves already to accommodate a huge population. And that is why social distancing in these areas or these huge cities like Delhi, Chennai, and Mumbai is not really easy to achieve. And that is why, in what ways can the infrastructure and other facilities in the cities can be improved has been discussed. And in the fourth article, Make It Sane. It is a wonderful, very little article, but talks about a very, very important issue, that what is the reason, even in the current scenario, in the current date, when we talk about equating and giving equal rights to men and women, what could be the possible reason of actually making the marriageable age different for the two. So we'll discuss that in detail. And finally, we have the news in flash column, wherein we will be discussing the crisp news pointers that are important specifically for our prelims exam or for adding facts and points to our mains or essay questions. With this, let's have a small discussion regarding the LawSikho courses that we have for you. So to present to you the best of our courses is the Lord of the courses, which is the Judiciary Test Preparation course. You can definitely view it, and it has amazing perks to offer to you. You can go and visit the landing page. The link is there in the description box, and you can finally get a free study material for yourself, and you can download it right there. We have other things and courses as well. You can definitely have a look at them. Now let's see that what is the MCQ, or the multiple choice question for the day. Which of the following country does not share? Please keep in mind that the question many a times has words like not, only, and such words. So they should be paid attention to. So which of the following country does not share its border with the Mediterranean Sea? First, Turkey. Second, Greece. Third, Jordan. And fourth, Egypt. And now here is the descriptive question for you. People's participation, which means the participation of the people at large in decisions as important as reviewing the criminal laws system in India, is the key to achieve an effective system. Discuss in the light of the current steps that have been taken in this direction. So the answer to this question has to be written within a word limit of 250 to maximum 300 words. You can jot down the answer to this question in the comment section below, and we definitely will make an endeavor to review your answers. With this, let's quickly start with the discussion for the day, wherein we'll be talking about the tension in the Mediterranean Sea. Basically, last week the tension soared, which means it rose, or it escalated in Eastern Mediterranean after Turkey sent an exploration vessel accompanied by Navy to disputed waters, and reacting to it, France sent warships to assist Greece. Basically, first let's understand that where is the Mediterranean Sea. Now, as we know that this falls right, Mediterranean Sea has a very, very important and strategic location, because on the north of it, it has Europe. On the righter side, or the eastern side of it has the Middle East, which is a part of Asia, western part of Asia, and towards the south, it has Africa. So basically, Mediterranean Sea is very strategic in its location, because now here you see, this is entirely the Mediterranean Sea. Greece, the capital of Greece is Athens. All of this Asian Sea also is there. So on the northern side, it has the Europe. And then on the eastern side, it has Turkey, which is a part of the Middle East or Asia. Then we have Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and this is the Gaza Strip, which was actually earlier disputed between Egypt and Israel, though now Israel had returned it back to Egypt. Then on the southern side, we have the African countries like Egypt, Libya, etc. Now, as we can see that so many countries touch borders with Mediterranean Sea, it already was in a very strategic position. But now, Mediterranean Sea has become more of very important because very recently there have been new explorations that have revealed that there might be chances of huge deposits of energy, to say, or huge deposits of coal for that matter, in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, since we know that coal is one of the biggest or the greatest natural resources that we have, and that is why Mediterranean Sea also has a huge resources of hydrocarbons hidden into it. Now, that is why, just like the case in South China Sea, like we have discussing about the South China Sea and why China wants the largest share in the South China Sea, it is the same reason, exactly the same reason, even that in the South China Sea as well, there are huge deposits of hydrocarbons, and that is why hydrocarbons basically are the sources of carbons through which we can make various sources of other energies, and we can use it as a fuel. And that is why a country who could have a hold on this huge deposit or reservoir of hydrocarbon would definitely become quite rich, and it will be very good for the economy of that particular country. Now, in current scenario, Mediterranean Sea also has it has been revealed that it also has huge deposits of hydrocarbons, and that is why two countries at large, first the Turkey and secondly Greece, have been contesting, like in a cutthroat competition to take their ownership kind of to a kind of to say claim over the Mediterranean Sea. Now, due to that, what has happened that Turkey in the last week had sent its exploration vessels, basically those vessels or ships that would do further explorations into this eastern area of Mediterranean Sea. And to counter that, France has been supporting Greece and has sent various warships to assist the stance of Greece. Now, in such a situation, it is very important for us to understand that why at all we sitting in India are discussing this issue. Basically, in areas of Greece and moreover like Turkey, which is a part of the Middle East, a lot of Indian population, or what we call as the Indian diaspora, also lives here. Now, many a times due to this, it becomes very important for the Indian government and also for the Indian citizens to know and understand the situations that are going on in these countries, because any changes in these countries or the policies of these countries can affect directly on the policies of our country as well. For example, recently Kuwait had launched or had passed a worker quota bill, according to which it was reserving the seats in a large number for its own domestic workers, and India was the one of those countries that used to supply one of the largest labor from the international market. And definitely, if this action has been taken by Kuwait, a lot of workers from India will be impacted due to it. And another example, like very recently in Lebanon, in the capital of Lebanon, which is Beirut, a very huge explosion took place, due to which a lot of people died and many have lost their jobs and homes as well. This also becomes important because firstly, India shares a very good international relationship with Lebanon, and secondly, another thing that a lot of Indians also reside over there, and there is a huge possibility that many of the Indians are also impacted due to this explosion. Now, that is why it becomes very important that we know that any country with which India has primarily relationships. Now, these need not only be good relations for that matter, these could be any kinds of relationship. And in that scenario, it is important for us to keep a track on such issues. And that is why we know that recently India has not had a very good relationship with Turkey, because it commented upon India's stance when it had abrogated Article 370 at various international levels and even at the United Nations General Assembly, and that is why it was not really good. But yes, of course, Turkey has relationships with other countries also, though they are also soaring up in the recent times, but India needs to keep a track of that as well. Now, here is a small plan that what led to this. There was a historical conflict between Turkey and Greece. It was like since time immemorial. It is not like it has just uprooted very recently. It's not the case. So after the discovery of gas in Mediterranean waters, both the countries have overlapping maritime claims. So basically now, as here we just saw that many countries have very close borders. As we know that all of these countries have very close borders, and Mediterranean Sea is though a large sea, but still not that large a sea that it can accommodate the territorial claims of every one of them. So basically, all of them have the claims over their exclusive economic zones have been, they overlap with the others. So that is why that is the main problem over here as well. So this you can read. This was, this is a huge clean chronology that has been given. You can go through this as well. So let's discuss the second article for the day, which talks about Committee for Criminal Reforms. Now, as we know that very recently it has been contested that the criminal laws or the criminal law system in India is very outdated. And there are a number of laws that don't even find their teeth in today's society. That means they're not even effective if we keep in mind the requirements of today's society. Like, for example, adultery. So adultery had been added, IPC's since of which year? It is from 1860. So the adultery was made a criminal offense in that time, and it took us centuries to decriminalize this. And for example, other examples like we had the homogeneity, which was under Article 3, Section 377. So it was also it was struck down very recently. So there are various other provisions also which need to be either repealed, added, altered, or for that matter to be overhauled all in all. And to do that, very recently, the Ministry of Home Affairs had constituted this committee, which had to look into this overhauling of criminal laws. Now, it is very obvious that it might be a bit surprising fact as to why Ministry of Home Affairs in the first place has constituted this committee. Because in the general sense, it is Ministry of Law and various other steps taken like by the Law Commission of India that do such activities. But it is very surprising that this time, it was Ministry of Home Affairs to have constituted this committee. So this was the first anomaly that we had been discussing so far. But here, in this article, the author has very beautifully, articulated these the issues in very nice heads and then into further subheads. So let's see that what are the main issues involved with the constitution of this particular committee for reviewing the criminal laws in India. First of all, it disables broad-based participation. So this basically is the question also that we have asked today, that why broad-based participation or a larger participation of people in such decisions is required to come to a result of the popular demand which we actually claim to follow. So the first thing it says that the only exclusive route to participate in the reform is through committee's website. So basically, there is no other way in which you can actually participate into this reform or give your own opinions. It is simply one way through which you can connect, and that is the website of this particular committee. Now, all of us know that how many of us are actually equipped with using internet. So basically, around 40% of the population uses internet, and that is it. And even amongst them, the majority of them are males, and the females have, comparatively lesser, exposure or lesser opportunities to make use of internet. So first is this issue. Then secondly, the majority of committees documentation are in English, and in India only 10% of the population speaks English. So obviously, if you're at all trying to communicate to the people, it should be in a language that they understand best, right? But now if you're choosing English as a medium, though definitely this is a universal medium to communicate, nobody denies to that. But then again, how much are your own people who actually are necessary to involve into this, how much do they understand this language? This is to be something that we need to think. Then thirdly, life cycle of the committee coincides with the pandemic. So basically, this committee is ad hoc in nature, which means it is temporary. So it will actually, it is working just in the times till the COVID pandemic is also, flaring up in the society. So basically, in this scenario, when people are already so devastated, many of them, they have lost their jobs, they've lost their homes, they've lost their family, friends, and in such a scenario, how much do you think it is practical that people will be actually paying attention to overhauling of criminal laws in India? Obviously, they have a lot of other main priorities that are important for their own survival, first of all, right? So this time was definitely not the right time to launch, first of all, this committee. And secondly, if at all you did launch it, you should, expand the time or extend the time which for which it would be functioning. And fourthly, no representation from marginalized communities, gender or religious groups can be seen, because absolutely no any leader, or even in the composition of the committee, there is no any person that actually could be understood as a potential one to represent the marginalized sections of our society. Now here, one other thing that we should not miss at all is that when we talk about connecting to the committee's website through internet, just yesterday in our discussion we discussed the current situation that is still prevailing even after 1 year of abrogation of Article 370 in the valley of Jammu and Kashmir. Now there, people hardly have any access to internet, and when we are trying to make them more included in the mainland India, how are we making sure that they also are included equally in the decision making process of this overhauling of criminal laws in India? So this should be kept in mind. Then secondly, it disables deliberation. Firstly, it says that no published terms of reference. So basically, there is no clarity as to which criminal laws it will be overhauling, which means which criminal laws it will be looking into. Then no justification for replacing Law Commission of India with the ad hoc committee, because obviously till this date, from the entire history of India, it was the Law Commission of India that used to do such activities, and now we have all of a sudden replaced it with some ad hoc committee. Thirdly, public representations have not been published. Now, if at all people are making any representations, these have not been put forward. And fourthly, only 3 month time has been given to carry consultations. So basically, there was this committee. The name of this committee should be kept in mind. It can be a very, very potential prelims question. Malimat Committee. So Malimat Committee was related to, it was also related to overhauling of criminal laws in India, and that basically took 5 times more this time to even give its report. And the time that you have allotted to this ad hoc committee is, just 3 months, so which is very less and marginal. And that is why it is not at all as per the deliberative democracy which we claim to have in India. So this was all for this article. We hope that it was clear enough for you. Now, since we've already discussed it into detail a lot many times, that is why we did not really get very deep into the discussion today. Now let's see that what is the third article for the day. It talks about planning of cities. Now, as we had just discussed, that the COVID-19 has hit harder on the cities, and in the cities, metropolitan cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, that already have very huge and very cumbersome population for that matter. It has become really, really difficult for the authorities and also for the people to maintain this norm of what we are calling as social distancing, because already the geographical area is very less as compared to the population that is residing over there. It's in crores and crores, and people are coming from all over the country to try their luck and to work for employment, etc. So it is very important that this time we take as the time for restoration of various things that we were not even looking forward to do, but now it is probably the right time to plan our cities. Yes, it needs to be planned into various directions, and that have been very nicely and articulately discussed into this article. So basically, with 2/3 of India's COVID cases in Mumbai, Delhi and Chennai, the underinvestment in the cities has been exposed. So basically, whatever were the weaker areas of these cities and various other cities that have been hit harder by COVID-19, they have come up, and now they can be clearly seen. Now let's quickly discuss that what can be the resilience steps that can be taken to make our cities more productive and more efficient in infrastructure and otherwise. Firstly, water. But obvious, it is a very basic thing, not only the drinking water, but also water for keeping the sanitation. Here it says that access to cleaned piped water can make or break the COVID-19 prevention plans. Now, obviously, when we are saying you should wash your hands more often, you should keep your hands clean, sanitize your hands, wash your clothes more often, do not use clothes again and again if you're wearing those clothes somewhere outside. Now, for all these activities, what is that one common thing you need other than the intention to do all of this? Absolutely, water. Now, if in the societies where water is not at all available, and if at all it is available, you have to stand in queues and lines for hours and hours, do you think people will be actually using that water to wash their hands, wash their clothes, and not into some primary things that are more important for their survival? Obviously, we know the answer. And in this scenario, it says that according to FICCI, Water Mission, which is a Federation of India's Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So basically, it had a water mission. It focused to reuse wastewater and grey water as a positive step. And that is why it says that it is very important that we provide piped water. Now, as even Delhi government and also governments in various states have promised that they will be providing piped water to all the households. So that is one of the biggest things that should be achieved. Secondly, food and nutrition. Basically, nutrition in your body, the health status in your body already helps you to keep your immune system high and already helps you not to catch such viruses. And the second place, even if at all you have caught a virus like COVID-19, if you have a good immune system or if you have good resources to, boost your immunity, nutrition and food, etc., you are more liable, you are more, in a position to get cured easily. And that is why it is saying that India is a home to 15.1% of world's undernourished population, which is very, very big blot on India's status, because also in the global hunger index we rank 102nd amongst 117 nations, which is bizarre because India is one of the largest producers of various food grains, and yet we are undernourished. And then it is important to ensure that food is available at affordable rates for the poor till the time COVID-19 has, shrunk down. Then cleanliness, obviously, Swachh Bharat Mission has been a boon had it, because see, in this article, the author has said that if at all this COVID-19 had hit India in the times of 2014, when most of the defecation, which was urinal and other activities, the other stuff for that matter, it was done in open. So at that time, it would have been absolutely impossible for us to put down this virus at all. But now, since we had Swachh Bharat Mission in hand, and we had already declared India as an open defecation-free country, and we had built a lot of toilets that have helped maintain, firstly, social distancing, and firstly, curbed the spread of any kinds of viruses or other diseases also. So it has been a very big boon for us. Fourthly, the infrastructure. A targeted investment in infrastructure is needed, because we know that even the cities that used to be thought to be as one of the largest and the best cities of India, they had to make the stadiums and turn the stadiums and schools into hospitals. This totally shows the incapacity of health system or health infrastructure that we had, that if such pandemic hit the city, then we were not really equipped with the doctors or the testing kits or other facilities, the testing labs, hospital beds, ventilators, etc. And that is why it is very important for us to focus primarily on the infrastructure as well. Then power, and also it talks about the reduction of carbon emission that should also be taken care of. Then fifth, it talks about the power. It says that we should promote the sustainable energy, and that is why India, though, is a very, it is a very one of the leading countries that actually is focusing on renewable energy. And we should know that 2/3 of the global air pollution deaths are caused by fossil fuels, and this should not be happening. And it is also evident that people who were more prone to air pollution have, are more prone to catch viruses due to viruses like COVID-19 as well. And then finally it talks about transportation. So it says that we should invest more into public and non-motorized transportation like bicycles. And it has been seen all over the world that these methods have created actually more employment as compared to private or motorized transportation. So this was all for this article, and finally we'll be discussing the article which is talking about the minimum age for marriage. Basically, the government has recently decided to reconsider. It is such a good news that it has actually, finally decided to reconsider the minimum age of marriage for women. So what is the legal framework for minimum age for marriage currently? Let's see. According to IPC, that is the Indian Penal Code 1860, it has criminalized the sexual intercourse with a girl below 10 years, right? Then age of consent bill 1927, it increased the age of consent to 12 years. So basically this is a small chronology that we should know for our own understanding. Then in 1929, just 2 years after this, the age of consent was further raised to outlaw the marriages of girls below 16 years. Now, the current age is finally 18 years for women and 21 years for men. Very nice. So now we actually, celebrate this fact that now only after 18 years a girl can get married, and that is why child marriage can be put down. No girl can be, a victim of child marriage, etc. But if we introspect properly into this, why do we think that we need a lesser age for a girl to get married and a greater age for a man to get married? Basically, this is a very, vague at times conception in a society that prevails, that women tend to, be mature at a smaller age, and that is why it is justified to, put a lot of responsibilities on them even at a younger age. But to consider today's scenario, when women are also, engaged into various kinds of activities like education, they want to develop their skills, etc. Why do we think that 18 is the correct age for them? If at all 18 is the correct age for them, then it should be the correct age for marriage for men as well. And if not, then for women also this age can be raised, or whatever the case is, it should be made equal in every situation. Then let's see that what are the reasons to reconsider and why do we need to equate this age. Firstly, it will improve the female health, because we know that many times girls, though they attain age of 18, but still they are very physically feeble. They're not that physically strong, and that is why when they tend to get pregnant after their marriages, or even before that, when they tend to have any kind of sexual activity, so that is very harmful for their body and for their health also. And that is why the cases of maternal mortality or infant mortality are increasing, though currently they have seen a decline, but yet this age, if we increase it, it will definitely see a better situation in the cases of infant and maternal mortality as well. Then secondly, fulfill promise of equality under the constitution, because definitely when we are promising the equality, then why not promise and give equality in the matter of marriageable age as well. Now with this, let's finally discuss the news in flash that we have for today. So the Supreme Court has cleared the PM CARES fund. So we know that when this COVID-19 had hit India, this charitable fund had been created by the government, wherein people could come up voluntarily and could give their donations for the charitable purposes related to this. So basically, the Supreme Court has held that this fund is a public charitable trust, and there is no occasion for the Comptroller Auditor General to audit this, because obviously this is a charitable trust. There is no need to any auditing to be done on this. Actually, there was various appeals which were saying that the funds from this so this amount be shifted and given to the NDRF as well, which is the National Disaster Relief Fund. Basically, here the Supreme Court has said that these are two absolutely different entities, and there need not be a gray area created between these two, and the funds that are available for national disaster management are separate, and for this COVID-19 thing or other charitable things are different. Now, secondly, the government jobs in Madhya Pradesh. Recently, the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh has announced that the government jobs in the state would now be 100% reserved for local people only. This definitely has come up as a huge issue of controversy, though any official decision to this has not been taken yet, but this is a mere announcement that has been taken. But then again, we should know that the Supreme Court in the case of Indira Sawhney versus Union of India said that there is a cap of reservation to 50%, and it observed that there can be no provision of reservation on preference that is so vigorously pursued as to destroy the very concept of equality. And further, under Article 16, Clause 2 of the Constitution, there is a clear direction that there will be no discrimination on the ground of place of birth. And though the domicile system works, it has also been approved by the Supreme Court. So basically, domicile system can be approved where educational systems are to be discussed. But when it comes to jobs, even their domiciles do not work in many situations. But yes, some other steps have been taken. So let's see what we will have in hand once this decision is officiated, or let's see what happens to it. So this was all for today. We hope it was a good session for you. Stay tuned with Law Seekho for such more sessions to come. Thank you so much.